nowadays you can create content for essentially every channel, every platform, everything in marketing, I would say, is fueled by content.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SaaS SEO Show. I'm your host, George Halsiotis, and today I'm very happy and excited to be joined by Elena. Elena is currently the head of content and brand marketing at Maze, a B2B continuous discovery platform where she manages a team of 4 and leads the company's content marketing function. She has been at Maze for over 5 years, having joined as the first marketer and second employee. She has since built the company's content and brand foundations and worked across various marketing programs from long-form editorial content, SEO, videos, podcasts, events, and more. Elena believes in the power of good content to build brands and drive growth. We are connected for quite a while on LinkedIn, and I was looking forward to a conversation like this with you, Elena. Welcome.
Thank you so much, George. Thank you for having me.
So, in the intro, I said a couple of things about you and your journey at Maze, but could we start by sharing a few things before you start working at Maze and your journey up until you started at Maze?
Yes, of course. So my journey in marketing actually began kind of accidentally, as most marketing people, start. So, essentially, I kind of fell into marketing because I always loved writing and I loved reading as a kid in school. And I always knew this is where, my passion lies because, my favorite subjects in school were English and Romanian. So I loved reading, I loved writing. I also used to have a blog for over 4 years in my school years. And I, built a community around that. So I knew I wanted to do something with writing when I grew up, essentially. So during my university years, I actually got a part-time job and I started in a content creator job, that's what they called it. So it was a job creating tourist guides for a city map application for mobiles. And I also, by the time I left, I ended up, doing some social media for them as well. So this was in my first year of university. And then in the second year, I also got a remote internship with, a company in the Netherlands. And I worked in community managing. That's what they called the role. But I did content and social media managing, essentially. And that role was actually, my first remote job, which back in 2016, I actually, I think it was around 2016. I think at that time, you couldn't really find lots of remote marketing jobs. The most available remote jobs were developer jobs. So that's kind of where my love for remote work started. And I knew I wanted to continue working remotely. So that was during my uni. But after university, I ended up switching a lot of jobs here in my hometown of Chisinau, Moldova. I think at some point I had 4 jobs in 6 months, and I ended up leaving all of them because I didn't like them. So I either left, because I didn't like the culture or the job was not challenging enough. This was all before I found this job at Maze, and I applied. And I got started actually as a marketing intern at Maze. This was the role advertised and the role I was in for the first 6 months. But I joined the company. So I joined Maze as a second employee at our pre-seed level. Essentially I grew the company from there. It has been an amazing journey for the past 5 years. And I've become a manager now, as you mentioned in the introduction. And I've loved, and I still love my job at Maze, and I truly believe in the mission we're solving for.
Can you please speak about that mission? I mean, for someone who hasn't heard of Maze before, can you give us an overview of what the company does and who is the typical customer?
Yes, of course. So Maze is a B2B continuous product discovery platform. What that means is essentially we allow product teams to run product research from really like the first stages of a product development process. So think like idea generation, idea testing up until and even after launch. So you can do lots of types of research with Maze, and it varies from research that's more generative, where you can research what you can build and how you're going to build that, and like other kinds of more like evaluative research, where you can test what you build, and then test how that product is performing after launch as well. So in terms of who is it for, it's actually so where we found initial product market fit with Maze in the first, like in the early days, it was with UX designers or product designers. So they were our, our promoters, let's say, of Maze. We actually built a very good community with product designers, and then with time we built and expanded from there. So we added more use cases, we built additional functionality. So today, when we say, who are we building for and who are we, targeting, marketing, it's what we call product teams. So product designers, as I mentioned, but also UX researchers and product managers. That's what we seem like the product use cases, so who can use the product. But if we go beyond like that, and if we look at who can actually consume the insights you've collected with Maze and the learnings you made with Maze, it can go, it can be anyone from like marketing people, maybe even like executive, founders, I don't know, anyone in a product organization, essentially.
That makes sense. Now, 5 years with the company, first marketing hire, leading content and brand marketing. I will ask you, what were the biggest learnings from this journey so far when it comes to content, and what drives actual results when it comes to your content strategy?
Yeah, very big question. Yeah, so I always joke that every 6 months or so, it's like I'm at a new company, because especially in those early years, when you're building a startup, every 6 months or so, you're like, you add more people, you expand your team, you build new use cases, you evolve your strategy. So it's like I would say changes were only constant at a startup. But in terms of my biggest learnings when it comes to content strategy, there is a lot of learnings I made over the years, but I would say the biggest learnings go back to basics, like the basics in marketing. I would say the fundamentals that everyone kind of always forgets somehow. So if we look at content strategy, my biggest learning, I would say, is focus. So when you're, especially as I started as a first marketer, and then I moved into a content role when my manager, so my current VP of marketing, joined after me. That's when I moved in a content role. So I was then after that, I was the only content person as well. So when you're only a one person content team, you need to focus, because nowadays you can create content for essentially every channel, every platform, everything in marketing, I would say, is fueled by content. So that's my biggest learning. Like, you need to have focus, and you need to understand what your marketing strategy is, because our content strategy is based on your marketing strategy, and you need to understand where you want to have the biggest impact. And then you need to also connect that to the business strategy as well. So I think that's my biggest learning. And, it has been something I've struggled with as well. And my team has struggled with as well. Like we've had to, like we always want to do a lot of things. I work with a team of very talented people who always want to do the best and want to create a lot of content and, do a lot of interesting things. But we've had to actually, like even earlier this year, we had to look at everything we were doing, and we had to say, okay, where do we want to have the biggest impact, and what's the highest priority for us right now as a team and as a company. And then we actually had to cut down a lot of things from there, projects we've started, and we had to put a stop to them because we realized we needed to focus our efforts on like a very particular channel or very particular goal. So yeah, I would say focus. You need to have focus. You need to understand what you're doing as a content team or as a content person. You need to understand how what you're doing connects to bigger goals, like connects to marketing goals, connects to business goals as well. And then tie everything together with that. And then I would say another learning I've had over the years is, again, it's nothing new, right? I'm not inventing new things here. It's really marketing basics, quality over quantity. I think like everyone, there is a big challenge of, scale and production when it comes to a startup marketing. Like you really have to, when you just get started in content, you're starting from scratch, you have nothing, you have nothing on the blog, and you're like, there is a push to, let's do a lot of things, let's publish a lot of content, let's, how fast can we get this thing out? But if you don't focus on creating something of quality, and I would say that's even more important now with the amount of content that's being put out nowadays. There's a lot of noise out there. Attention spans are not great. People are not going to pay attention to anything that's not good, I would say. And when we got started with our content strategy, I would 3 years ago now, I would say that's what I had to advocate for most. Like SEO was the first channel we actually invested in a lot, and the first channel we wanted to scale. And the common thing with SEO is that everyone thinks you can do it very quickly, you can do it at scale. But I was very adamant on we need to create something of value, because yes, you're going to create a lot of content, you're going to publish that, you're going to get a lot of traffic. But what happens when most people, what happens when someone arrives on your website from Google search? Do they actually stay there? Do they, read the content you put on the page? Do they convert? Or if not, do they actually remember you and then come back later maybe? I think even at that point, when Maze started, we didn't really have a lot of companies that were doing the same thing in terms of the product. Right now, the industry has grown and there's a lot of more competitors, which is a great thing. But at that point, we didn't really have, a lot of product competitors, let's say. You could do the same thing you do with Maze, but with our kind of product. Whereas on the content side, we had a lot of what I like to call content competitors. So a lot of big websites, very well-known websites where we're already publishing content on the topics we want to address. So the only way we could have competed with them is by doing something better or doing something unique. So I think quality over quantity is definitely another learning and something I've always tried to advocate for. And I always try to bring people back to, these are the basics. I would say these are my biggest learnings.
What about challenges? What are the biggest challenges from, these 5 years?
Yeah. There's a lot of challenges. Even these learnings, obviously, they come from, things I've struggled with or challenges we had as a team, and then you kind of learn and you grow from there. In terms of challenges, I would say one of the biggest challenges I find content teams have, and even I've struggled with that, my team, has struggled with that as well, is that there is a very big risk that as a content team in an organization, you kind of become like a request-taking team. You know what I mean? Like you have like the product marketing team wants you to, write some copy, edit a product announcement. The demand gen team needs some copy for, I don't know, ads, or needs it to write, some emails, or needs it to write a report for lead generation, all of that. You have, obviously other teams, depending on what your content team is responsible for. There is a very big risk that as a content team, you kind of become just, like that team that takes requests and just completes those. And you're almost like, you're just there to support other teams. So I would say that has been my biggest challenge, where I really didn't want that to be the case with the content team at Maze. So I really wanted us to, yes, we're there to support other teams, because that's, the role of content as well. But beyond that, like what's the impact that we want to have as a team? Like that's my, the biggest challenge I've had, and where I had to actually stop and think and have conversations with my manager, where I said like, look, I want us to lead this project, and this is an idea for a project we have that we want to lead. So actually, to give you a concrete example of that, like at the beginning of this year, like a content-led project became a company-wide OKR for us at Maze, just because I noticed an opportunity where I noticed a business, challenge we had where, so if we speak about research, for instance, which is what Maze allows you to do, is essentially research. One of the biggest, challenges we had as a company back when, a pandemic happened and then the recession and all of that, we had a lot of churn, let's say, right? So we had a lot of churn. And not only that, but we had companies coming in. So we had people coming in the funnel who actually, liked what we're doing, liked our brand, wanted to use the product, but then they didn't end up, going with Maze because they didn't have enough maturity to use the product. Because in their own organization, they weren't, they mature enough for a product like us. So I kept hearing this challenge from the customer success team at Maze and from the sales team as well. I kept hearing conversation or, oh, we lost that organization because, they don't have use for Maze right now. They are not using the product enough. So then I thought a good way to solve that, or I was thinking, how can we solve that through content? And then it came to me that we could create a research maturity model where we would provide actionable content for organization to grow their research maturity. So then I shared that with my manager. She pitched that to the leadership team, and it became a company-wide OKR where we wanted to, enable organization to grow their research maturity. And that ended up being a 6-month project for us at Maze, where we created this model. We worked with industry experts to create a framework for organizations. We collected data from over 600 organizations, and we created a report as well. And then we launched that. We also launched a course, so a free course you can take to grow your maturity. So to go back to your question, I think that's to me the biggest challenge of a content team, but I always have to work on and push against is I don't think a content team should be just request taking team. I think you have to have your own impact, and you have to deliver that impact and tie it back to your business goals. And you also have to communicate that impact outside just, being a support function for other departments.
Yeah, so you can just be there to fulfill demands and create content for sales or whoever comes and knocks at your door. You have to have your own say and be able to drive impact with your projects. An example which you mentioned, right? So if we could zoom out from this project and try to see the whole picture, what would you say are the things that are part of your content strategy, and focus nowadays?
Yeah. To answer this, I need to give some context around how we have been thinking about content strategy from the beginning. So actually, content has been a key pillar of like the company from day one. Because again, like from the way Maze started is, so as I mentioned before, Maze found like initial product market fit with designers, because at that time there was no tool that allowed designers to actually copy their prototype link and then paste it into a product, and they could test that with users very easily. Like that was before Maze, that was actually something very hard to achieve. Like you would have to have, a researcher working with you. You have to do like moderated like research, like, like speaking to users one-on-one. And it was just very hard to do. And then, it wasn't something designers usually did. So when we built the tool, we created something that designers could just take, could use by themselves, in an interface they are familiar with from like the tools they already use. But the problem we had is that actually like designers don't know, or like traditionally don't do research. So they don't know how to do that, and research is a very complex, thing. It's not easy, like people go to uni for that. They do your bachelor and master's and PhD in that. It's not easy. So our entire content philosophy is centered around that goal. It was to mainly educate non-researchers to do research. And if you look, like at the time, if you looked at whatever resources available for people to learn how to run UX research, there were resources mainly targeted toward UX researchers. So again, they were filled with like industry jargon. They were very hard to understand, very hard to consume. So that's where, our content strategy centered. It was around educating our personas, non-researchers, the basics of research, because again, there is some form of research that only researchers should and can do, but we wanted to empower our personas to do that, the basic type of research that anyone can do. So that's why we actually have a lot of free resources on our website. We created a lot of guides, and that was and still is the basis of our content strategy. If we look at content strategy from like what's the goals we're trying to move the needle on, and the metrics we use to measure success at Maze, but the content team is responsible for bringing in new audiences into our funnel, so it's growing our top of the funnel. So obviously that's traffic from all our the content we produce. We do measure that, but I would say it's not just traffic for content for traffic's sake. We also look at how does the traffic convert. We also actually measure, pipeline generated from content. So all of the good things as well. So it's, like content is there to support and drive the top of the funnel, but we also look at how does that actually convert and translate into, signups and all of that.
It's great that you said that, because one of my questions was regarding let's say content performance measurement. And I guess you gave the answer. You create content to serve different, say, objectives, which obviously makes perfect sense. One thing I would like to discuss is the fact that you have some topic clusters around UX topics that rank for many keywords with high visibility and high, positions and so on. Could you explain your thought process and how you approach topic clusters, from like initial topic selection to how you design your hubs, to anything else like content optimization and so on?
Yeah, very big topic. Could speak about that for like an hour. Yeah, so I would say like if you look at our website and the content we produce right now, about 70% or so is content optimized for SEO. I don't want to say SEO content because I hate that term. I wish we wouldn't call it that, but yeah, for the sake of simplicity, so you know what I mean. But yeah, a lot of the content we produce is optimized for SEO, and as you said, it ranks for very competitive keywords. And as I mentioned, that was the first channel we invested in from a content perspective, and even today, it's like our most top performing channel when it comes to top of the funnel. It's still organic search to this day. I don't want to say it's going to continue to be that because we all know with AI and, all of that's probably going to change. But yeah, organic search has been a big investment for us and we're still, reaping the benefits of that years later. So in terms of how we approach, our cluster creation and how we select keywords and all of that, there is really... I would say there's two parts to doing content well for SEO. You need to have your SEO basics down, which I think, anyone listening to a podcast probably know what they are. So I'm not going to go through them, but, you need to optimize a page for a particular keyword. You need to have, and we do that through, tools like ClearScope and all of that. You need to do proper research, keyword research. You need to understand the search intent. You need to understand what section you need to have in the pages. So I'm not going to go through all of that, but you need to have your SEO basics down because if you want to rank on organic search, that's the basics of it. And then the part that I think is less discussed in SEO spaces is actually how does that connect to a broader, let's say, brand strategy and a broader editorial strategy as well. Because, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, sometimes I feel like, I hope I'm not insulting anyone, but I feel like SEO folks just look at, for them, success is, did this person, convert, or did this person land on the page? And that's it. They stop there, which I know is super important. You want to get that right. But to me, like the content we produce needs to go beyond that. It needs to actually, help you build your brand. So if we go back again to how we got started, 2 or 3 years ago, we had no content on our website. And then we decided we're going to invest in SEO. I didn't want to just create, SEO content for the sake of SEO content and get that traffic and that's it. I actually wanted for us to build a very useful resource library that ranks on search, but at the same time, it's there to, be consumed by our audience. It's there to educate our audience. It's there for people to check out, no matter if they're coming from search or not. It's there to, and then the other part of it is UX and user experience. Like, what's the experience you want to give your readers once they are on your page, once they arrived from Google search? What's that experience like? So that's kind of how we approach creating that cluster. And our strategy with that is the typical, hub and spoke approach to content marketing, where you create a hub around a top keyword and then you have spokes. So like pages related to that topic. So that's how we approach it. And we have 2 types of hubs right now on our website. One is what we call guides. So that the usual, chapter by chapter resource where you group together related topics and you can rank that way on a very difficult keyword. And then the other kind of hub we have is one we call collections, which we're actually in the process of redesigning that entire experience because they're quite old. But the thought process there was, those collections are on topics that are very broad. So they are like on topics like UX, product development, and so on. So at the time, I didn't want to just create, let's say, a guide to, the ultimate guide to UX, or like the ultimate guide to product management or product development. I I just didn't think that's the right format for a topic this broad. That's like saying the ultimate guide to marketing. I'm like, what's that? Like you can't see that saying related to marketing in a guide, like it's just not gonna be enough. So then we decided we're gonna keep the same hub and spoke approach. You can have the URL structure there, like all set up for Google. But then from an editorial perspective, I wanted to have more of a collection approach where we, in addition to those articles we have there for SEO, we also kind of feature in that collection any other content we've created on the topic, like, podcast episodes, events, our guides, so any other resources we found on that topic, so we can actually give people who arrive on that page, a comprehensive resource on the topic, so they can learn through, they can learn from beginning to the end, or at least that was the goal we had here. So again, I think it comes back to, you want to get your SEO fundamentals right, but then how does that content actually build your brand in the long term? And that's what we try to achieve there.
Do you think that, I don't subscribe to the term as you put it earlier, but do you think that SEO content will be a thing of the past in, say, 3 to 5 years down the road?
Well, that's a big question. I don't have a magic ball to answer that, but we all know what's happening with generative AI. Like any day now, reintroduction, of generative AI is going to change. It's going to impact everyone who invests in SEO. We don't know exactly how. I just still think SEO is going to continue to exist as a channel. I don't think it's going to disappear completely as long as we have, search results. That's what SEO is. But what that looks like from a content perspective, I do think it's going to change. So we'll probably have to learn and adopt, like I think SEO people have always done, But in terms of SEO content, the reason I said I didn't like it as a term is because I think there is, that connotation where if you say SEO content, people just automatically think it's bad content because of the nature of how SEO people have approached creating this content, right? So I don't like that distinction because to me, any content produced, by a brand needs to be, if you want to do something with it, it needs to be good. If you want it to have some type of effect, it needs to be good. So that to me, that's why I don't like that term. But to me, instead of when I say content, I try to say content optimized for SEO, which is what it is.
I agree. And thoughts on generative AI and any use cases you may have found for Maze?
Oh, so thoughts on generative AI, I'll start there. I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, mainly from how it's going to impact us as content marketers. I do think it's going to have a big impact on our profession as content people. And I can expand a bit on that. So what I mean is, I don't think it's going to take our jobs, which I think it was, but a lot of content people had when ChatGPT was released to the public. I think everyone kind of freaked out at that point. I don't think it's going to take our jobs, but I do think it's going to impact our roles, and it's probably going to shift the role of a content marketer in the future. So what I mean is, if you look at what ChatGPT or all these generative AI tools did, is they democratize access to writing and business writing in particular. Because I have different thoughts on creative writing, and that's another thing. But we talk about business writing here. So if you look at it, what tools like generative AI did, they essentially put a writer in the head of everyone in the organization. If until now, our people, our departments were non-writers were blocked by content writers when they wanted to, write an email, write an announcement, even a very important, internal announcement as well. Like you had to have a right to go over that, right? Nowadays, I would say writing has become a commodity, right? It has become a commodity that everyone has access to. And we can argue that, and I have the same opinion as a lot of content people do, that the content you get from ChatGPT, at least right now, it's not very good. But to non-writer people, I don't think they see the difference. So I think, because even ChatGPT has been trained on the content that's out there. It's not, it's creating content similar to what we as content people have put out. So at the end of the day, it's to a degree, content as good as what's already out there. So I think, that's a bit unfortunate and sad, because I could go onto a very big discussion around how writing is actually a very hard skill to master, and good writers are actually super, strategic people, because to be a good writer, especially in B2B, you have to know a lot. You have to be an industry expert. You have to know your product. You have to understand your customer. You have to do a lot of things. And I think traditionally writing hasn't been, let's just say, as appreciated as other, or content writers haven't been as appreciated as other marketing people. And we can argue about that, but I don't know shade to product marketers, but I think if you look at a marketing organization, product marketers have always been the more, sought after marketers and the more, let's say, compensated marketers. Whereas I could argue that any content marketer can become a product marketer, but I don't think any product marketing can do the reverse, right? And I've worked with product marketers, and I can truly say they're not ready to be a content marketer. Whereas, I can point to 3 people today who are content marketers, and they can become product marketers tomorrow, because the skills are there. It's just a different approach, but the skills are there. So to me, it's very unfortunate that writing hasn't been, appreciated as a skill in marketing. And unfortunately, with AI, it has become even more of a commodity. So in terms of my thoughts on AI, I think it's going to impact our profession, but hopefully not in a bad way, because I actually think if content marketers can adapt and can find, our skills to focus on and to add to their expertise, let's say, not just writing, then I think there is a future where content marketers can actually be more appreciated because of what they do. In terms of the use cases, so your second part of the question, in terms of the use cases we've found at Maze, so we've been experimenting with, AI tools like any other content teams out there. And our, we use writer.com, which I'm going to shout out here because it's my favorite, generative AI tool out there, because it can actually, keep your brand guidelines in mind and all of that. But yeah, we are using it not to fully produce content. I don't think that's what it's there for. But we are using it for, quick things like research. It's very good at the initial, generative stages of content creation, where you just need some help to research a topic, to come up with ideas, to give you a rough outline that you can then, add it and work from. I think that's where, AI tools are good at now.
I know we are a bit tight in terms of time, so I will save all the other questions I had for a future discussion. Last question I have for you, Elena, where can people find out more and get in touch if they'd like to?
Yes, for sure. So I can send over my LinkedIn links and all of that. I'm mostly on LinkedIn these days, but you can also find me on Twitter. Less so recently, but yeah, LinkedIn and Twitter is where I'm at. I'm happy to speak to anyone who reaches out about anything content related, really.
We will drop this in the show notes for people to access. Elena, I would like to thank you very much. That was a very nice discussion, and looking forward to part 2 at some point.
Thank you so much. Looking forward as well.